This is one of the most favorite conversation I like to share with my always colleagues and my juniors when I was doing internship. So Yash, I graduated on 2019 itself. So it's not like I'm having a more over of 8 to 10 years of the experience. But yeah, doing continuous internships and all, I consist of over 5 to 6 years of experience on the same. I practice into as an associate into AM legals. I did my internships with tax councils, with Big Four, with advisory law firms, and always also with the AORs. And after graduating, I started my practice with the chamber of Mr. Sunil Motilala for 8 to 10 months, and being a junior to them. And I started my basic initial practice with them, and then I decided to have an overall practice and to to learn about overall area about all together with the tax. So I end up with a law firm. Yeah, main thing that always challenged me and challenging me right now also, that to create your own path, like being a first generation lawyer, to always having to getting an advice from some person is always kind of a challenge to how to get it. So that's what something excites me and also challenge me on a regular basis.
Great. So Siddharth, we'll just start, we'll kick off the conversation, right? So the first thing, can you share us a very brief background what tax litigation practice, when we say tax litigation practice, what does it mean? What does it inculcate? How it is different from a general litigation practice?
Yes, I would first say that tax is a very beautiful subject, and it's not like it's as similar and as common as any other subject you take up, like insolvency, bankruptcy, or an arbitration, or any kind of 138 check matters, or even a criminal litigation. What excites and make this tax litigation specialist, it's all about understanding, because tax is just a subject, but inside it's a subject, it has different branches. Whether itself there are lawyers who are specializing in the one branch of a tax. Suppose there's income tax, there is a international tax, there is a transfer pricing, and GST, customs, of course. So there is a wide range of practice which any first generation lawyer and any law student can always think of doing in this era, because tax is just not, the person is not just stick to an income tax, but it can explore a lot of into the tax practice, into GST, customs, international tax, of course, transfer pricing. Because in this tax litigation there are councils, there are law firms which are practicing solely into a particular branch. Suppose some law firms are specialized into GST, some councils are there who are specialized into income tax, some councils are specialized into international tax. So there is a wide range of practice in tax itself. That's why people think they this field is separate, or that's a different or specialized than any other field. But I would say the wide range of practice, having so many branches in the subject itself, make it special and different. Whether any person or any kind of person can of course opt for the same. There is nothing like this practice requires something like
that's going to be my next that's going to be my next question, Siddharth. So basically I'll tell you something funny. So when I graduated, one of the things I was most scared about in all my interviews, I used to be like, I am fine with every department, but please don't give me taxation, because there is so much, there will be so many backgrounds. I have never taken accounts. I'm a PCM student, I have done maths, but I don't have any background in account. I have never attempted chartered accountancy. So anyway, I'm not going to understand taxation. So yeah, when we talk about tax litigation, is it necessary? I've always seen that most of the tax lawyers that are there, they insist that you should be a chartered accountant, or you should have accounts in 12th, you should be very good with numbers, you should have a way with numbers. So how does that reconcile? Because some of the most important tax lawyers, if we see, they are also constitutional lawyers. They have very good grasp on understanding of law. So how do we reconcile these two things, understanding numbers and all? And is it necessary according to you?
Yes, this particular statement, this is a stereotype of statement which I used to hear when I was doing my internships from my seniors, from my colleagues, and I have, I'm listening the statements right now also, since practicing since few years. See, what happens that normally people have the perception that if you are ending up into being a very good taxation lawyer, that you should always have a, some kind of a accompanition of a chartered accountant degree, or you should be a very good into the accounts or very good into the tax. But I would say that that's not the reality. That's more from a personal experience, I would say. If I take my example, I am not a chartered accountant. In fact, I'm, at that point of time, I was doing a CA, but then I didn't thought of continuing it. So it's nothing like, the person should have that compulsion of an mandatation of the chartered accountant degree. Of course, and basic knowledge about the accountancy or the tax would add on the advantage to the person, because tax is some subject which is having a bit technical in nature. That's why people are always used to, avoid the particular subject, because they don't want to get into the technicalities, because there are provisos has the provisos, exception has the provisos. So that's the thing. But I believe any person who is passionate about a subject and is eager or keen to learn can always pursue this subject. Of course, the basic knowledge of accountancy and taxation subject will help them. But if at all a person suppose doing a civil practice of 2 to 3 years, and he may end up into the taxation practice as a specialized practice to be a full-fledged lawyer into tax, of course that person can. I have seen many person and in fact I have done the juniorship under such 1 or 2 people that they were doing the civil practice for a few years and then they end up being a very good taxation lawyers.
Okay.
So, there is no kind of some kind of that statement that only chartered accountants can do. Like only the,
or you need really good understanding, complete understanding of how profit and loss works, how management and how account statement works.
Being a taxation lawyer, it's just like a lawyer in any other area. Even while doing drafting a tax petitions or tax appeals, you should also have a very good knowledge about the constitution, about the partnership, about the LLPs, about the any other law in which the particular tax matter tax has been inculcated. Suppose there is a tax litigation matter of 260 crores of suppose some kind of a automobile company. So that particular tax matter has also should be seen in total with their balance sheets, with respect to their numbers, with respect to their partnership agreements. So so being a tax lawyer also, you should have a knowledge of all the other areas by inculcating into the tax litigation or a tax drafting or the petitions also. So it's nothing like that a person only with wearing a very good CA background or a tax accountant's background can only pursue the same. Of course, the person who is a chartered accountant, like many of my colleagues who are interning with me were the chartered accountants and then doing law, they always have an add-on advantage because they have a thorough knowledge of taxation and accounts.
But then you have an add-on advantage that you have a thorough knowledge of law. So kind of complementary, right?
Yeah, of course, that's always put an advantage. See, if the person is eager, I always have been believed that the person who is eager and passionate about learning a subject, he will do it by, or he will or she will do it by anything. They will start attending the webinars, they will start attending the articles, they will try to consult many other lawyers who are practicing into tax about learning that how this particular practice works. So it's nothing about that. Like any other kind of a practice, tax is also a very beautiful practice which needs an accompanition of all other areas, like as you said, taxation lawyers are also very good constitutional lawyers and they're also doing a constitutional practice. So your question itself has the answer that being a taxation lawyer doesn't only require the this accountancy or this basic taxation knowledge. It's a combination of many other subjects which helps them to gain a very good practice.
Yeah. So Siddharth, narrowing our discussion down to 2 very specific things. One thing is, like you said, that's a very good news to hear that you do not have to compulsorily do chartered accountancy to have a background in litigation, tax litigation. But what I have noticed in my years of practice here also, that lawyers are generally very reluctant to, even full service lawyers, like a senior I was working under, we had everything. But lawyers are generally very reluctant to take taxation matters because they think that if I am doing even a writ petition, say, in a taxation matter, I will have to have a lot of accountancy, a lot of maths, and I will have to get that background. But in my experience, what I have found it that your good understanding of law, for instance, even when you're doing intellectual property, there's a lot of technical aspects that are involved, but it is limited to your understanding of that. You don't have to completely have very good background in accounts as long as you understand the law that you're dealing with, section you're dealing with. So what has been your experience regarding that when you have compared chartered accountants? Because at the end of the day, CAs also have to learn law. When they will have to understand the basics of law, they will also have to understand how precedents work, reading of the judgment, something which we do over the years. On the other hand, lawyers have to learn accounts, lawyers have to learn how profit and loss statements work, why it is calculated in a particular manner. When you're interpreting a statute, it's not directly applicable like IPC. You have to have a little bit of technical knowledge to understand which form goes where, what does that. It's a lot of procedural requirement also. So my point is that what has been your experience when you have seen lawyers and chartered accountants practicing? Yes, both are possible, but what are the different edges they have vis-a-vis each other?
Yes, I would say that every other area of law has their own specialized. Suppose it's an IBC, a person has to specialize with the procedural laws. Suppose it's an arbitration, procedural laws with conceptual clarity is important. So as good as tax is also an area which it's a combination of many things. If as far as the kind of an application of mind which you told that chartered accountants and lawyers require to accomplish what they are lacking from their part, I would say that I had my many colleagues when I was doing my juniorship in the chambers of tax councils. I had colleagues who are doing chartered accountants where the law, they were doing law. So I would say on my experience, the people who are having a very good taxation and accountancy background, they are very technically sound. And they are also thorough with the kind of an analyzation of the balance sheets, analyzation of the schedules, analyzation of the provisions of the taxation, and they are thorough with the same. And suppose there is some kind of a calculation which need to come, so they are thorough with the same. But however, there is always a kind of interpretation skills which they lack. That's what my personal experience is. The drafting skills, interpretations, and knowing about every other law, which always a lawyer has an upper hand, they lack. So there what they are working on. And even and if it's suppose a lawyer, which I had personally experienced, we normally like without having a very good accountancy or a taxation background, we like in the technical we are not that much technically sound. We need some time to be understanding, going thorough with the balance sheets, profit and loss. Suppose it's a transfer pricing, then getting into a PLI or any other kind of factors which are required for to getting the comparables things done. If it's a DTAA into international tax, so I believe the always study of some particular subject on continuous basis with a proper having a blueprint and with a proper aura will always help a person. There is nothing like this person can do it only and I cannot do it. I never thought that. Always I had a in my personal experience I faced such a situations where I could not understand the technicality of some particular subjects like transfer pricing, which is very much technical in nature. But however, doing continuous study of the same and 6 months, 8 months reading the continuous judgments where you understand the concepts. First, it's very much important for any lawyer or a law student who is opting for a tax practice, irrespective of their background, whether they are first generation or not, to understand about the concepts of the tax, because tax is something which that comprise of many other areas. So understanding, because and it's always the tax is some subject with every week there is some of the other notifications, some of the other amendments, and something new is coming up every day, and every and on particular section, on one section of any subject, like suppose direct act one provision, there are a lot of judgments having different interpretation to look at the particular particular section, having a different perception to look at a section into different scenarios. So it's this practice is something which requires a lot of study, everyday continuous reading of the subjects, drafting the summaries of the same, reading the articles of the experts, and continuous studies, I believe, can always help a person to get into this field having an upper hand. Because if the person having a CA degree or having a very good accountancy background will always have an upper hand into being a technically sound. But that doesn't mean the person who doesn't have that cannot do it. Of course, to take my example, I always face this particular difficulty by doing, reading the provisions of the tax, because they are very technical in nature. But, continuous reading of the same, then always backed it by the commentaries, articles, judgments, will always help you to get, understanding about the analogy of what exactly the provision is, saying so, or what the understanding of the provision is. So I believe that's a normal thing which any other lawyer requires in any law, with an persistence, consistency, and hard work, and a passion to do it without even losing the hope that I am not understanding this subject, this is not my cup of tea. So that kind of because normally I had my many colleagues who are doing internships with me, or any other in chamber, and even in our law firm, some interns will come that that this taxation is not my cup of, I will not do it. I always avoid it because I'm not understanding it. But I would always suggest that if something which is new is always challenging, and if the person is having a passion to do it and he take it as a challenge, no, I want to do it, though I didn't have any upper hand, then I think that person can do it and he will do it. It's always requires kind of patience, persistence, and consistency. That's all I believe any lawyer requires, and that's what requires in the taxation law.
Okay, so there we have ironed out any doubts you guys had, whether CAs have an upper edge or lawyers have an upper edge. Both have upper edge in certain ways, and both have to learn a lot when they decide that they want to do taxation. So Siddharth, another thing I'll tell you from experience in Indore, we have this concept. So generally you must have heard of two kind of lawyers: civil lawyer, criminal lawyers. We have civil lawyers, criminal lawyers, and tax lawyers. Like, the civil lawyers will not do taxation. There will be separate lawyers who will only do taxation. So how in your opinion a taxation practice can be done by lawyers who are already practicing civil law? You have already said that it is done, but generally, yes, is it a lot of hard work, and is it a good idea? Because taxation everybody needs. If, for instance, if a firm comes to me, if I get the taxation business, it's also lucrative for me to get a lot of that thing as an independent practitioner. So your thoughts on that?
See, yes, I would say that being a taxation lawyer, it's not like I'm not practicing into IBC, or I'm not touching upon the arbitration. See, I always have believed, and my whenever I have done my internships, when I did my internships with into tax chambers of government councils, and even that particular lawyers were not from the taxation background. In fact, I would say that particular lawyers were from the they were having a 5 to 6 years of practice into civil law, and they decided to do some specialized practice, and they end up with the taxation laws. So see, there is always, as I told right now, before in previous communication I covered it, that understanding and having a conceptual clarity of any subject is very important. So tax is also one of the subject where the conceptual clarity becomes a need of an art, because along with that's what I say. See, provision of taxations are not difficult, but to understanding about that provision, that how a particular provision will apply into which situation, to what company, under what circumstances, that's something a charm of a taxation field is, because every provisions there are a lot of judgments on one particular provisions, and if the particular there is an judgments are there on interpreting about and, or, is, and on conjunctions also. So that's what the charm of the taxation is, that every provision itself doesn't be interpreted in a one way. There are a lot of interpretations by different,
and the taxation laws are interpreted in a very different manner than, say, a constitutional or other legislation would be interpreted.
Yeah, because see what happens that taxation may be just not like a amount of a tax which a person pays, but in what situation he pays, what kind of company he has, what kind of exemption and notifications has come through the governments, and how the particular notification exemption will work to that particular entity in his own way. That's what differentiates. I believe that interpretation of the provisions are majorly differentiated, and has been distinguished on the basis of the facts, because facts of the case is something which brings more interpretation, more judgments of the particular analogy, and also the intention of the legislature is important. Why that particular amendment has been made, why that provision of the tax has come into the picture, what was the scenario, what happened in that particular year when that particular provision come into the picture. Understanding about these basic things will always help a person to understand why exactly the provision of law is, why exactly the provision of the tax has come into the picture, why this notification has come into the picture. I always been told by my seniors during my internship that intention of the legislature is always important to understand why this particular section has come into picture, why this judgment has come into. Because just reading the section and okay, the section works, just getting into how the section works, why the section has came into the picture will always help you to understand how. just merely going into
That's
how will, you know, some of the other place you will get stuck when it's something challenging come into the picture. Yeah.
Yeah. So flowing from that, Siddharth, I had another last question before we move on to our next discussion. So what essentially would you say are the skills anybody would require as a lawyer to foray into litigation? What are the legal skills that you require for a good tax litigator?
See, being a first generation lawyer, I always had a good mentor. Like I found a very good mentor where he told me that whether, irrespective whether you take a tax litigation, whether you take any property, go into a property IPR or any kind of, you know, if suppose you do a niche area, suppose like SEBI or green tribunals, always some basic requirements are there for irrespective of any litigation. It's like continuous reading, drafting on a continuous basis, understanding about the subject, you know, drafting articles, which helps you to inculcate a good interpretative skills, you know, understanding about the section one by one. See, I'll give you an example. When I was doing my internship, I decided something like, you know, to make the, you know, different questions. See, in taxation, there are always a question of law. There are no issues. Its issues have been named as a question of law. Question of law number 1, 2, 3, 4.
Substantive question of law.
Exactly. You framed it right.
Yeah.
So, you know, I always, you know, decided to do something. I used to make a word documents of the same. I used to take the questions of law, in which favor it is, whether it's a favor of an assessee or favor of a department, and you know, which helps me and my senior when the appeal comes into the picture, it comes into our office, that we need not to have to go into a detailed research. We have that particular worksheet first, which has been updated on weekly basis, and we get into the, okay, which question of law is this? Okay, we have the judgment on the same. We can make out the judgment and we can see whether we can have use this judgment or we can distinguish this thing. So, you know, it's always all about, you know, self-learning. I always believe, you know, being an intern is always important for any law student to have an ideology that we are here to learn and to decrease the work of our senior, rather than, you know, to increase the burden on the same. If the such kind of mindset a person has, he will always find out the other ways to, you know, enhance their own skills or inculcating the own skills. Like I'll tell you, being an intern, I always had the, you know, practice of, you know, making the summaries of the entire brief and put that into a one paper and, you know, put it into the brief of my senior. So when next day, when the hearing is, he comes into the morning at 8 p.m. in the office and he starts reading the brief. So he has the gist of all the documents which are in the same. What are the arguments? What are our arguments? What are the judgments? So, you know, that helps you to also understand about the, you know, because see, it's always important to understand how to read a file, how to go with the facts of the case, how to go with the grounds of appeals, how to deal with the judgments. So all these things will, you know, help the particular law student also and lawyer also, and it always helps the seniors to understand, you know, their time decreases basically. Whatever the time they have to put into a one brief, that decreases into the minutes. So, you know, that was something or the other thing I always have to be fascinated about to do, you know, to increase my knowledge. I always used to create folders of the sections where I used to put the judgments. You know, I right now also I have the, you know, habit, and weekends when I am free, I used to, you know, research about the, I put the one particular section into the taxman, suppose, and I get many judgments. I used to read the judgments, I used to put the concepts in Word documents, and I used to copy paste the, you know, summary of the judgment with, for my knowledge. So whenever the, you know, case comes into our part, it's always important to, you know, it becomes, you know, cherry on cake for us, that you need not to put so much time on the same, and in the glimpse of the, you know, eyes you get, okay, I had research on something, I know about this. So, you know, your time decreases, your passion increases on the same. So I believe for any person, as I told you, passion, you know, it's all about self-learning. Yes, I would say that, because I've seen many seniors who have come on this practice.
Yeah, so
Marathi medium and having no law background, though they are excelling into, you know, like sky is the limit for them to now do in this practice.
Yeah, so summarizing that, I think first and foremost, like you said, for any lawyer to have on taxation practice, first thing they need is passion and that conviction that I really want to establish that practice. Second would be that they really need to up their game when it comes to drafting and all. Third, and mostly what we need to learn from you across the field, I don't think just tax lawyers, is how to be meticulous and methodological when you're learning updates, how to start compiling them from early on, because this thing helps, especially in taxation. Keeping up with daily updates, I think, helps more than other laws, because here the interpretation offer varies and they are at local level as well.
Correct.
So, all right. So these are the three things. guys, now we will move on to the next question, Siddharth. Next part of our discussion. You have interned at a lot of prestigious places, very senior people, and other things. So, how do you think that has affected your outlook towards tax litigation, and how important do you think it is to decide from an early stage that you want to foray into tax litigation, and what are the role internships play in taking that decision?
Yes, when I took the law, I was completely blank. I tell you that I was completely blank because without having any law background or having any upper hand on my family, I would tell you none of my friend was a lawyer when I started doing law. I was like, okay, I'm doing it. I don't know. As I told you earlier that I was going on a blank road without having street lights. I don't know where I will end up to. So see, internships are very much important irrespective whether there is a tax litigation, tax law, whether the person wants to pursue into GST, income tax, international tax, or any other kind of other civil practice. But why it becomes, very much important or a need of an hour for any law student to understand if they want to make a career into tax, to start early. See, my mentor and my senior, when I did my internship, and I respect him a lot, what he told me that जितना जल्दी चालू करोगे उतना जल्दी अच्छा होगा. That's what the exact statements and words he used to live, look at to me and tell me. As early you begin, as early you gain. Because being a first generation lawyer, it's not like, you have your dad's office or something, have a godfather on your hand and you just want to get a seat on a table. It's something which you have to establish yourself. So, if you want to, decrease your struggle after being a lawyer, it's always, I always have preferred to do hardcore internships in, to decrease
And
my...
this is, I think, across, this is similar across the board. This is not different in litigation. Litigation, if you're going, we always say that, start early, as early as possible.
But Yash, what's the point which always being an intern I had faced, and always, being a lawyer also I'm facing into the interns that they know that internships is important. We know that internships is important. Everybody's telling internships are important. But, what exactly to do in the internships, where to go into the internships, because people are saying internships is important. Who will show them a roadmap? See, I would like to say that an internships, what the normally interns prefer, that they end up, in their first or second year, if they are doing 5 years course, and if they are doing 3 years course in first year, they start internships into the law firms. See, I would say law firms are the amazing places to understand and learn. But there is always, step-by-step procedure where the person can learn. If you want to go to a second floor or third floor of the building, you will go by the first floor, right? You will not put a rope and you will directly jump into the building, or you will end up with a chopper. So, that's something which person has to understand. That, see, in law firms, you will always go gain a very good knowledge. But I would suggest there are also a very good other avenues also that the person can explore. If you take my example, I started doing my internships with individual lawyers. See, what happens is that in the internship period, the mentoring or the one-to-one face communication or the learning is very much important for any person, irrespective whether it's a taxation or any other law. But why taxation? Because taxation is technical and very much conceptual in nature. So just have I doing any internships just for the certificate will not help you. You will not help the law students. I always tell my law, interns who are doing in our firm, and to any my friends that do internships with very good planning and with very good time period. Frame the time period, frame your law year, if you in which year of the law you are, and then accordingly jump on the internships. I would always suggest that internships should be start with the tax counsels and the individual lawyers, because that are the places where the people learn a basic about groundwork about the tax, how the tax litigation works,
Court procedures and all. You see everything into action.
Yeah, correct. You basic concepts of tax are getting clear. How to interpret the judgment, how to read the file. That's what the basic thing is. Very important. How to read a file. It may look like a joke. Okay, what's big in reading the file? But I tell you, many people goof up in reading the file, because there is always a pattern of reading a file. What to take first, what to take next, how to make markings, how to do compilation of the documents, how to read a judgment, how to mark the judgment, how to how to summarize the brief and brief your seniors. All these things becomes very much important, where the person may not learn into a law firm, because and that may they learn into the tax with the chamber of tax councils, or into the individual lawyers. That's what I personally learned. Of course, the person who is into fourth year, fifth year into their law journey of an academic year, being a 5-year law student, or if they are into the third year or second, after their fourth semester starts in their third year, they may end up into the doing internships into law firms. Definitely, because see what happens that in law firms you will definitely get a advanced level of the work of research, reading the judgments, summarizing the judgments, making newsletters, drafting the articles. Some person will give you a topic to draft an article, but what's use of drafting the articles when you don't know anything about the concept? So so it's always good to go step by step and to plan your internships, because people just do the internships for the sake of doing for the certificate that may not help you after being a lawyer.
Yeah, so Siddharth, this is something I'll tell you from my experience. So we have a course, I have told you, on corporate taxation. So we get a lot of students who are in 4th or 5th year now suddenly want to foray into litigation, and they come for understanding. And this is something we have seen over a period of time. A lot of them who have interned with some of the most senior counsels, who have had opportunity to work with a lot of tax lawyers. Even after 2 or 3 internships, something as basic as how to read a judgment is a skill they still struggle with. Because that's where, and even people who are working, and I'll tell you, people who are working in even a taxation law firms, especially during first year, that's where they face most difficulty, because they find themselves in a place where they do not know how to start reading a judgment. They will read it like we read a book, that you first read from para 1 till para 400 and then go back and see. So these skills, like you said, are extremely important. I think when somebody is interning, irrespective of whether you're interning in with a tax lawyer or any lawyer, if you want to go into litigation, you need to go with a lawyer and learn how to read files, how to read the judgment, and how your lawyer is going to use the material that he has discussed over previous night in the court. That art of, court work is something you really get. I think that's what we were coming down to.
Yeah. See, yes, I tell you from my experience being an intern, I have always been keen to learn more and more, irrespective whether my senior tells me or not. That's what a law student should have a habit, that just not do a parrot work. Like if someone tells you do that thing, always make an habit of doing something. Always keeping an attitude of being a proactive in nature. Always do something which even been not been told you. I'll tell you my example. When I was interning with Mr. Advocate 𝘱𝘳𝘢𝘕 who is the senior standing counsel for taxation department, we have a majorly work into Bombay High Court, and if some matters has been then pending, and our time for the matter is been it's a number. Suppose the serial number is 11 and now serial number is 2 is going on. I always used to make notes of what the exactly counsels are telling. I used to observe from 3 perspectives. First is what exactly the facts of the case is, what exactly the section which is involved into the same, what exactly the law they are talking about, and third and fourth is code crafting. Because for a lawyer, it's always important to how to deal with the opponents, which is very much important. It's not only about the understanding about the subject, but also the understanding about the how to take, if something something firebacks to you, so how to take that particular situation. That's what my senior always used to tell me, that understanding about the subject is also important, and understanding about the code crafting is also equally important. Then going into the departments, understanding about the filing procedures. I used to go directly haywire into the tax filing departments into the original side of Bombay High Court, and I used to tell some clerks that please tell me how the appeals are filed here, how the objections are removed, what are the things are required for all these things. So these things will always help a person who irrespective if they are a first generation lawyer or not. But of course that will be work on for the first generation lawyer as a cherry on cake to always have an upper hand, because see, no one is going to tell you. See, internships is people are expecting, and one person will make them sit down in the front of in a chair and tell you, see, now this is a law, this has to be done. Nothing like that. It's just a mere
all the juniors, all the interns we used to have in our chamber, I always used to tell them that if you are interning, the most learning you're going to get is that go with the clerk. That's where you will learn the most. Right now, especially if you're in first 2 or 3 years. Go with the clerk, see where filing is done. Probably he'll be able to teach you much more than an associate or anybody will teach you in your first 2 internships.
That's always right, but I have always, told by my seniors that all lawyer is,
Yeah.
lawyer is a combination of being a clerk, being an associate, being a, understanding from the perspective of judge also. So, a person being an intern should always be open to any kind of work he's been given to. To be very frank, in my starting of the internships, I was just giving a work of doing Xerox, or the printing of the particular paper. And in the first initial days, I was like, what things I'm doing right now? This is not my work. But then people told me that my senior told me, Siddharth, I'm not just merely giving you a paper to Xerox. I have a paid clerk for the same. I pay my clerk and peon for the same. Why I'm giving you is that I expect you to read the particular paper, read the particular judgment, or read the particular recipe for which I am telling you to take my printout. That's what I expect you to do. That will help you to inculcate a habit of reading something. See, normally what happens that interns have been told that go with this particular document, submit into the court or submit into the filing department. And then when the filing department person ask that particular person, what's this all about? He's like, sir, I don't know anything. I've been just told to my senior. That exactly has happened with me also. And I've been taught by that departmental person that whenever you comes with, be thorough with the document, whatever you are coming to submit. Because you never know that what casualty comes while filing or while compilation of the documents you are going into the court, and you may not you cannot call your seniors again and again because they are very busy people. You have to understand, you have to learn that being proactive and apply your mind into that particular current situation and get things done. That's what I believe lawyer should and a law student should understand. Will always have an upper hand that get things done in any manner, although of course in a legal way, but get things done. You cannot call your seniors again and again and tell them now what to do. You have to apply your mind and just think out of the box. And that's what I believe internships are very important. It should be always go in a very planned manner. Plan your internships, plan where you have to go about. In the chamber also keep two kind of diaries, like I used to do court diary and chamber diary. Whenever you go into the courts, you should always jot down what exactly things are going into the courts, what exactly sections you learn. And then of course when you come into the chamber, you can discuss with your seniors that these things I learned new. So what exactly this thing was all about. In the chamber diary, you can always write down what your seniors are instructing you. What about the management of the files, management of the documents, summarization of the judgments, compilation of the judgments. I believe all these things, understanding and being open and being proactive will always help any intern to get into this tax litigation and always being having an upper hand.
Great, Siddharth. So now I will come to very specific questions I have regarding the tax litigation practice and our topic, the main part of it. So suppose I, as a civil lawyer, somebody who has just starting a practice, who has graduated this year and wants to start a tax litigation practice, or somebody who has been, I have say a lot of matters in other laws. Now I want to foray into tax litigation. So what kind of forums forward to in practicing during my initial year as an independent lawyer, where I would not require years of experience or where there is no concept of counsel practice, where I can at least, I can use it as a key gateway service to enter into tax world, establish contacts, get certain very basic things. So what are those kind of works that are there?
See, yes, when I stepped down from my law college, no doubt I was having a thorough knowledge about, how this tax litigation work, being, exclusively doing internships into tax for my 3 years or 2.5 years. But I would say my entire knowledge and perception wane into vain. Because when I stepped down into the college, it was a complete new world for me, what exactly I was, looking at. What I had my perception were okay at their own part. But there were many things which I didn't knew and had my perception that doing so much of the internships will help me to land up into a very good job into a law firm. But that's the biggest illusion I had, and it broke down within 15 days where my CV got rejected by many places, though having an extensive experience into tax. But I would say that, there are basically 3 to 4 areas or avenues, I believe, that, any fresh law graduate can opt for, and, any law intern after being a, lawyer can start with. First is like, they can start, planning to do their practice as a tax counsel. Second thing, they can always start, as an advocate on record, which is also famously known as an AOR practice. Third is like they may end up into the law firms being an associates, and they can enhance themselves. And fourth is an individual, practice which any lawyers does. But I would say, for the first generation lawyer, then, ending up doing an individual law practice wipes out, because it's always requires a lot of years of experience for any person to get a tax brief, like, first hand tax brief.
Yeah, so that's where I was coming from, that if I'm starting, say suppose I'm not looking for tax briefs or big tax matters. If I'm starting for small services, say drafting a reply to CIT, drafting a reply to Income Tax Commissioner assessment order, reply against assessment order, rectification proceedings. These are basically some of the things that generally junior lawyers, junior chartered accountants and all get. So what are these kind of services? Say GST, there are certain new requirements under GST. So what are these services that we can start without, waiting for that long gestation period of working under the senior?
See, yes, what happens that if anyone is coming to you with the drafting of a notice, this minimum slab rate is of 50 lakhs in ITAT, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal.
Yeah.
Nobody's come to nobody is going to come to a fresher for huge tax amount. So it's always, you told, I understand your point and I got it. See, one person can always, learn about, GST registrations, their compliances, how the, entire hierarchy works, or if at all he's getting his lucky enough to get a drafting of the notices, if the assessing officer is giving the notices to client, that is replied to a CIT, then appeal, then the next step is to appeal to a CIT, Commissioner of Income Tax Appeals. So if the person is getting an opportunity to draft and same, then definitely it's a good opportunity for any person to go into the CIT forums, because they are the lowermost forums into taxation litigation where the person can start the practice of. Basically, if the person wants to actually enhance themselves into a tax litigations, they may, the most, according to my experience, the most preferred places are the chambers of tax counsels. If I say my experience, I started my litigation practice with the chamber of Mr. Sunil Motilala. He's a highly intelligent and very famous tax counsel, where I, understood, where I got a very good background about the tax litigation, how the concepts of tax litigations are working. So with the tax counsels, what happens that you get a very good narrow range of, broad range of, I may say that experience about how the High Court works, how the entire hierarchy of tax litigation works. Because the hierarchy of tax litigation is not as similar as any other civil suit. Here the notices come from the assessing officer, it goes into CIT appeal, it's getting challenged into ITAT, that Income Tax or Appellate Tribunal. There are various benches of Income Tax or Appellate Tribunal, then it march up to High Court, and then it goes to Supreme Court. So understanding about the procedural aspects, how the tax litigation works, how the branches of tax litigation, suppose the GST is a very new law, and it's a very emerging practice right now. So, there are very several cases right now also, they are pending before the SISTAT, that, Central Excise Custom Tribunal, where the service tax and VAT matters are still in pending. So, how to inculcate with that particular era of law, and now the new entire GST has come into the picture. So, in tax counsel, the person learns basically 3 to 4 things, which is very much important for them. That is mainly a drafting, which is very, very, very much important for any lawyer to get into this, any kind of practice, irrespective whether it's a tax practice or any other practice. Second thing is the understanding about the judgment, summarization about the judgment, which is also a skill itself into the taxation field. Third is briefing. You get an opportunity to brief the counsels, because if you're working under a senior counsel as a junior, then definitely the person will tell you the brief about the, about the case. Briefing about the case will help the person to, because for briefing, he needs to start from the scratch of, understanding about the facts, understanding about the judgments, what exactly the client's expectation is, what the law is. The understanding about the subject is a one part, and, communication, or, telling someone what's exactly the brief is all about. It's a skill of all other things, because the person may understand anything. The person may understand the concept or the facts of the case, but he may not be able to communicate if it comes to, communication. So that's where, basic skill of a lawyer starts. If he wants to argue into the court, he may start by, briefing their seniors. and inculcate into the discussion with the seniors when they preach them, or when where they brief them about what exactly the case is all about. If the person is starting with the councils of tax, the tax councils, he may work for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. What about the satisfactory level he gets, that now he is prepared for some advanced level of the work. And if he wants to end up being a tax counsel only, the tax chambers are the best places where he can understand how to do a counsel practice. One another avenue, I would say that it's one of my personal favorite. It's then AOR practice, advocate on record practice. Now the people who don't know what's an AOR practice is like, AOR are the people who files the wakalatnama, and the council, tax council generally has a practice of not filing wakalatnama on their own name, of course. So AOR practice is always my personal favorite, because since internships I have done my AOR practice into the court with the law firms, with the tax councils. I have understood this practice. For any person like me who is coming from non-law background without any taxation or accountancy degree, or having a specialized degree, AOR practice works as a cherry on cake. See, because what happens that I've always been told by my seniors, like that since people have been choosing being a counsel practice, being a very good tax lawyer, there is a huge vacuum into this AOR practice. Now where the person can always explore. But the AOR practice is comprised of it starts from the pin to plane. I would say that it starts from the drafting of the appeal, research of the case, research about the case, so summarization of the judgment, briefing your seniors, briefing the tax counsels who have been appointed to argue the matter, filing of the appeal, removal of the objections, compilation of the judgments. You're doing all the kind of a procedural, kind of a work which is really very relevant, and for which the people have less knowledge about how this procedural work of tax litigation works. So I believe any person who wants to start with that taxation practice, being as you told, being a civil lawyer who wants to start as a being a law graduate, you want to start, he can always start with the tax chambers, and he can learn an wide range of practice, and then he may establish himself as an advocate on record practice also, where there is a huge vacuum of practice, and it's one of my favorite, because here the person learns everything, with the argument, to how to argue, with the how to draft, how to summarize the judgment, how to file the appeal, how to get procedural things get done. So that's what very interesting, and something which excited me a lot, because in this field there is a very less people who are the very successful AOR, who are having a good hold on practice. So that's what something person can always explore the area of being an individual AOR practice, or can join some advocate on record, and he can learn how this exactly that AOR practice works. Another field of avenue, I must say, is like it always, like, it's one of the favorite for everyone is the law firm practice. Then person joins the as a law firm, as a tax associate, and he may explore a lot of things into law firms, because in law firms the person may learn a lot of things, starting from the drafting, research, arguing also, and going into the observation of the boards and many things. So I would say that law firms are also comprised of three. That's what my personal experience is, that some law firms into tax are doing only hardcore tax litigation practice. Into tax litigation also there are specialized law firms who are only into the income tax and international tax. Some other law firms are only doing hardcore GST practice, GST and custom practice. Some of the law firms are the hybrid of the same.
So Siddharth?
Yeah. And
some of continue. Sorry to interrupt you.
Some of the law firms are doing only the non-litigation practice, are just in just doing drafting and advisory work or the compliance work. There is also a very good area for any law graduate to opt for being into the non-litigation practice of tax litigation.
All right. That's really enlightening. So these are the different forums. So Siddharth, my counter question to that would be, see, so now we have courses where we teach students domestic taxation, international taxation. Now we are launching a course where we will be teaching the drafting part of it also. Now, these are the skills we as LawSikho impart, and we will put them in touch with practitioners. Now, once you have these skills, once you have a requisite skill and you are, say, working with a senior counsel, do you think that if after having a requisite skill, and if you're a first generation lawyer, if you put in a certain amount of time, it's easy to build a practice in tax litigation, or at least as easy as it is for other laws, or it is comparatively more difficult when it comes to tax litigation?
See, Yash, I would tell you that I have also been experienced, and I have seen my other colleagues also, that tax litigation is something where always a client expects a specialized person, or a kind of a person who is having a thorough knowledge about the concepts, about the judgments, about the procedural laws and everything. So it's always on the person to person how he develops his practice and develop his clients while working with senior counsels, or even if working in the law firm, how he develop himself being a very good lawyer. It's all about yes, I always told you before also, I told you that it's all about self learning, how the person it's inculcating himself to be a very good lawyer, just doing okay. Whether, see, he has a majorly two options, whether to do just a 9 to 8 or 9 to 7 job, or whether he wants to actually see himself after 5 to 7 years where he sees himself right now. So it's all about enhancing yourself day by day. There is no particular kind of a guarantee that after so many years of practicing a person will start fetching his own client. It's all about his own experience, his own expertise of getting clients, his own expertise of the subject, and his own expertise also to make people understand that I am a good enough to handle such big quantum of the merits of the matter on my own.
Okay, great. So Siddharth, shall we start taking questions now? We have a lot of questions that are there on both the things. So I'll just start. I think a lot of them we have covered, but there are few that we haven't covered. So we will take them one by one.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So Ashrit Sykes asks, on what basis tax lawyers are selected by senior counsels?
There is no particular kind of an I will say that there is no particular kind of a criteria which has been selected by them. When I was interviewed by the tax counsels, when I did my internship and my juniorship, I was always, that's what the expectations according to me is like, first of all, having a passion, because nobody is going to expect, very enhanced knowledge from you, or being excellent into the tax practice, being a, law graduate or being a fresher. But it's, it's always preferred that, that a person should be passionate, and he should be passionate about the area, or it's always good that he should having a glimpse of whatever the area and the tax litigation is during the internships. On that basis, I believe he may get a good juniorship. First of all, he should be having a consistency and passion about the law. I believe that's what I believe the council must be looking at.
Okay, great. So now we start from the first question only. Generally, chartered accountants seem to have an upper edge in respect to lawyers. I think we have already covered this question in detail.
Correct. We have covered.
Yeah. What are daily common works done by a tax lawyer? How basically different from generally any other lawyer?
See, what the basic work has been done, I would tell you that whatever the lawyer start his work doing a practice with any tax counsels or into law firms, or even as a individual, there are some basic work which any irrespective of the area of a law person has to do. Like he starts to understanding about the subject, reading the commentaries and the acts, understanding about the court procedures, basic work with like compilation of the judgments, filing the cases, drafting the appeals, continuously looking at the boards, understanding about how the matters is going on, assisting the seniors, continuously connecting to the clients and understanding about the subject. I believe that's all the basic work which any other lawyer, will, irrespective of whether he is doing a tax practice or not, has to do.
Basically, yeah. Okay. Now, Saksham has a question for you. Is it possible to practice criminal and tax litigation together?
See, as far as my experience and my knowledge is concerned, I have never seen any criminal lawyer pursuing tax practice and any tax lawyer doing a criminal practice. But see, as I told, there's always a possible. There is no kind of an embargo on a particular practice or a lawyer. If he's doing a criminal practice or he's doing a civil practice, he may not end up into doing a tax practice. Is of course there is a with the perspective of the clients, why not it's been normally preferred is because the clients always wants to some law firms or some lawyers who are exclusively doing tax practice, because they will they have an ideology that this person having an immense knowledge of the tax practice, they will able to help them. But there is nothing kind of an embargo. Always a person can do any, like being a criminal lawyer, he can definitely take up the tax matters. You just need a law degree to practice any kind of law, I believe. Yeah.
Great, great. So now Muthu Abhirami has another question, that it is important to note that up to IT/AT level, CAs can handle the litigation. So how does an advocate get clients in this area?
Okay, so see, I had my colleague during my juniorship, when I was doing my juniorship with Mr. Sunil Lala. What exactly I felt from him, that why chartered accountants are doing law, is that I asked him. He's like that for the rights, more rights. See, chartered accountants can only argue the matters only to this CIT level, that's a Commissioner of Income Tax Appeal, and IT/AT, that's what Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. Then if he wants to go, the matter travels up to the High Court, then only the lawyers who are the have the right or the authority to practice into the High Court. So that's why maybe the the getting the more rights, that's what the only the question remains for any person who is doing chartered accountant and who is doing law, to practice into the Honorable High Court and Supreme Court, apart from the IT/AT.
Okay, great, great. So Siddharth, another question Muthu had: how do we get clients in this field? Is it not difficult to get clients in this area than civil or criminal matters? Even getting clients for first appeal to CIT is not easy.
I would say that like any clients, it's always a challenge. I would not say I would not use a word difficult, but I would rather say a challenging. That it's always challenging to get a client, irrespective of whatever the field you are working in, because nobody's gonna come and welcome you that please come and take my matter. It's always takes time for a person to establish himself in, irrespective of any laws. There is nothing specialized about the taxation law that it's difficult to get clients, but it's always that it's always been believed that in taxation people takes time to get his individual brief, because you'll be having the higher quantum of limit of the very high, having very huge stake of matters, that normally client doesn't prefer any junior lawyers or any fresh law graduates. They always prefer any kind of a law firms who are expertise, or any senior counsels who are having a immense years of practicing into the tax to take up the matter. However, it's always takes time for any lawyer, irrespective of the tax practice, to get clients. So I always tell them persistence and patience will always help.
Okay, great. So another question, let's take another question. How much knowledge of accountancy is required for tax practice? Also, should one do both direct and indirect tax, or specialize in either?
So I would say that I would answer this question into two parts. First of all, as far as the accountancy knowledge is important, as I told that even I am not a chartered accountant, but having a basic knowledge about accountancy, like how the basic accounts works, how the mechanism of accountancy works, or how the taxation works, like if the income tax is being charged on some person, what are the tax slab rates are, or the basic how the taxation aura works, will always helps a person. There is no kind of any certification course is required for the same. Another part of the question is like you told me that can you repeat the second part of the question?
Just a second, I think I lost the question now. I was looking at other question.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. Can we take another question meanwhile?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So you had discussed about internships. So we have a lot of queries now on internships. So other than the students who are coming through 𝘺𝘧𝘪 who get internships through us, what are the other avenues students have who can approach for internships? How do they plan their internships?
Actually, that's one of my favorite area to speak, because I have personally experienced this kind of thing in my life. Because being a first generation lawyer, for first 6 months when I joined law, very early I understood that being an establishing or a good lawyer, you need to have a good references, good contacts where you can start internships. So initially what I faced is, like, I used to go into the courts, I used to start attending webinars, I used to start attending the seminars, conferences, and with lectures of various advocates, where I started making good contacts. I started making good references, where I understood what exactly is required for doing internships, what kind of internships is required. So what are the avenues I will prefer? That always we can always approach some lawyer who are into your contact to you and refer you to some good counsels, or you can always approach from the LinkedIn platform to some advocates. Wherever there are the vacancies, they can definitely help you out. Many nowadays, after COVID, now the virtual internships has their own charm now. So everybody is doing the internships virtually. So of course, the person can always approach the law firms and the respective email IDs for the internships, and they may end up into the suitable platform they want to.
Yeah. Or you can join a law seeker course, and then we will help you get those internships, whatever works. But thank you so much, Siddharth, for that. Now we have other questions. I'll take, Should we begin with advisory work and compliance before moving to litigation? 𝘧𝘪 has this question.
See, it's always, as I told, that after being a lawyer, it's a choice of a person. If he is very good into the drafting the opinions, as his application of mind is very good into the advisory and compliance part, then definitely he may move into the advisory and compliance. Because there are certain lawyers who are practicing into tax, or certain law firms are doing hardcore advisory and compliance practice, and they are actually there is a huge work also in advisory and compliance for the any client. Because when the what happens that when the clients get the notices, they may end up into the advisory law firms or the lawyers who are doing the advisory practice, that whether we should challenge that particular notice or not, how much the chances are for us to winning this particular case. So of course the advisory is the preliminary stage of litigation, where the I would say after advisory, the person after getting a good advice, person end up into the litigation. So of course the person has the avenue to start with the advisory and compliance, and not going into litigation or going into litigation after that.
Okay, we are running past our time, so I will only take 2 more questions. After that, we will have concluding remarks. So one question Balaji, I think, has posted this 3-4 times, so I'm taking this. I don't have a law degree, but I have passed CA final group. I am not able to clear group 2. I have deep interest in tax litigation and advisory. I have experience in tax compliance in corporate for 6 years. Can I get into tax litigation and advisory field? Will tax advocates consider me working with them?
See, doing a CA or having a even clearing RPCC would be a cherry on cake for any person to end up with any taxation lawyer. Because taxation lawyer will always have an upper hand with the person who has a good accountancy knowledge. See, I'll tell the person who has posted this question that even I couldn't clear my CA. I gave my 6 to 7 attempts and I could not clear. But that doesn't mean that person has an embargo on themselves that he may not end up into a good tax litigation or a good advisory. Having a basic knowledge and I believe the person should be able to convince that other tax lawyer or counsel to whom they want to practice, that how they are good enough to be with them and to get to help them into their enhancing the practice overall. So of course see, that particular person is always having a good upper hand, and of course having a good experience to work into the corporates. Of course she can handle into the tax litigation and advisory. Of course every lawyer will be person will welcome that person who is having a good accountancy background.
Great. So Siddharth, last question regarding this. We have discussed this in some way that there are different avenues for somebody who is working in law firm or practice. But now the question is, when it comes to specialized subjects, there is this view, even for intellectual property, that you should go abroad, have a master's degree, and then come back and then start your practice, showing people that, oh my God, I'm specialized in this area. So does that help? And if it helps, is it advisable to do this from abroad or India, your degree in taxation?
I would say that always See, whatever the lawyers I have done my juniorship or the lawyers I'm working right now at the law firms, I never had saw any lawyer who has completed his LLB from abroad and who had went for the LLM for abroad. Of course, I have seen my 2 3 colleagues are there who had done their LLM from the Vienna, who is very famous for LLM in taxation. But I would always see, and the whatever the senior tax councils have seen that I in my knowledge they have always it's all about application of your own mind rather than going into the degrees. Whatever the degree you have, basic LLB degree would also will help the person to get a very good clientele base and establish himself a very good taxation lawyer. So it's all about self learning and enhancing yourself. I would just say that a degree with respect to whether you do in India or abroad will always be as a, help you as a gate pass to enter into any particular firm or a tax council's chamber. Rest is all on you to develop yourself.
Yes, eventually, as long as you have passion and you have focus, like Siddharth said, you'd be set. You just need to give it a little time. Thank you so much, Siddharth.
Yes, I would just need to take one query which I really liked it. That I always faced by the interns that that since I have done my 6 months internship, 1.5 year internships, 8 month internships, what about the law students who are from NLUs or GNLUs who has the 1 month or 2 months internships period? Of course, because they are only allowed, according to me, they are only allowed in their vacation time, because I'm not from NLU or GNLU, so I have less idea about it. For such kind of person that I would always say that person can always for such people who are having the less amount of the period with the seniors and law firm, they can always always start reading the judgments, making the summaries of the judgments, drafting the articles, posting on the LinkedIn. Now you don't need the person don't need any kind of a publication to publish the articles. LinkedIn is the best platform. He can always start summarizing. I would say that to law students that that start doing step by step. Every day take one particular section of a tax, start understanding about the tax, read the judgment and summarize the judgment. That will help you in 2 ways. That will help you to understand what the concepts of taxation are, what's exactly the judgment says, and always it will always be enhance the drafting skills. So just because a person doesn't have a good amount of internship period, that doesn't mean that person is losing some kind of hand, or the person is having another upper hand. There's always a way. I would always say the doors are closed, the windows are always open. So a person has to find out then how to manage ourselves to being a very good taxation lawyer, though being a not intern into some places, or not, having not even interned into a huge amount of the internships. There is always a way. I would always say that there is always a way. Just I cannot do it, or we cannot do it. I believe it's always an excuse. I believe it's always a way.
There's such amount of infectious positivity Siddharth has with regard to taxation that probably next time when I face a taxation matter, I will not run away and be like, I'm not going to do this. So I think you have solved a doubt for a lot of people who were attending today, and probably they will take taxation seriously next time when it comes to them, that it is a doable. You have made it doable, Siddharth. So thank you so much for this session. And also a very important plugin, after which I will come back to Siddharth, that we are starting a course on advanced tax litigation on 1st October. So I have posted the link on your chat. So go through that course, reach out to us for the details of the course, plus any other doubts that you have, please reach out to me or Siddharth with regard to webinar questions which we could not take up due to paucity of time.
And yeah, now, yes, I'm always open for any law student or any of my colleague who is doing law for any kind of help or any suggestions. Because
I think you have given that vibes in the webinar. You are going to.
I believe that I never had any kind of upper hand on my head, so I understand the people who are facing such a journey. As I'll always believe in helping the person who needs a help. So it's always go to win-win situation. I always believe in one statement which I've been told by my senior, that you lift by lifting others. So that's how it works.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think that was very well communicated in last 1 hour. You have given those vibes. I'm pretty sure that your message is going to be clogged for some time now with a lot of queries that are going to come. So thank you so much, Siddharth, for a very, very informed session. And I really look forward that our association is not limited to this webinar, and we have a lot more association.
Of course.
And also, Siddharth, can you post link to your LinkedIn profile? Or do one thing, guys. You can reach out to us on LawSeco. Siddharth is tagged there on the webinar post. So through that, you can find Siddharth's LinkedIn profile. And sorry, we are not going to give his mobile number. You can reach out to him through his LinkedIn profile. That's the most we can give. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yash, for calling me on this wonderful platform. But I had a wonderful audience, and thank you.
Yeah, we had a very good audience and very interactive session. Thanks to you.
Of course. Yeah.
All right.
My pleasure. I am obliged.
Okay, guys.
Thank you, Yash.
Yes. Okay, guys. Thank you so much.